Hello everyone, back to you in today's second video. So we've already done the 5-day forecast. You can find a video to that here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page and it's underneath the link as there's also the written version which you get to from the buttons at the top of the page. So colder 5-day forecast than we've had so far this winter. Coldest 5-day forecast this winter so far. And there will be some snow around. If you want to know more about it, check out 5-day forecast. Of course, we'll be updating Snow Watch this evening as well with all the latest on the snow risk for some parts of the country. There could be a covering of snow in some places by the end of tomorrow. So we'll be looking at that in detail with Snow Watch tonight around 7 o'clock. This video is going to look at where the next week to 10 days. So we've already done sort of 1 to 5 day time frame, and now we're going to go on from 5 to 10 days. And we're going to have a look at the chance of cold weather coming back next week. Because we've got the cold snap, but starting now, temperatures are going downhill from now onwards. And that's going to start to turn milder again over the weekend. So around Sunday, Monday, it will start to turn a bit milder. And then get through to next week, we might start to bring cold air back in from the east. That could be really quite significant. Cold air. However, it might also be very dry, so there might not be much snow with that. It just depends exactly where the high pressure is going to sit. If we get a proper Scandinavian high, then we could get snow as well as cold. But if it's just high pressure sitting sort of around Germany, Denmark, something like that, then it's likely to just be very frosty, dry and cold. So I'll talk you through all the detail in a second anyway. Before we go on with that, just quick to say about the ads. There's links to articles on the page. I just mentioned those a second ago. Have a browse widgets, click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in, you're helping us to pay for our website. Thanks very much for doing that. But we start off with the stratosphere. So this is the temperature so far this winter at 30 HPA over the North Pole. The black line here tells us where those stratospheric temperatures have been through the winter. The grey line is the trend line. It's the average as we go from September just there through towards the summer, which is over here. So you see about through December, which is around this period just here, we are at the coldest point of the year in terms of those temperatures in the stratosphere over the North Pole. And then typically at this time of the year, we're starting to recover those temperatures, beginning to lift them up, albeit in a very gradual process. They reach their peak in the summer, those stratospheric temperatures over the North Pole. Now, the black line shows where we have been at 10 HPA with the temperatures through the course of the autumn and the winter. 10 HPA is one of the top levels of the atmosphere. Actually, it's 30 HPA. I'll look at 10 HPA in a moment. It's one of the top levels of the atmosphere. So you can see that through most of November, those temperatures were a bit warmer than average. That was associated with the colder November that we had. Because when temperatures in the stratosphere over North Pole are warmer than average, it normally is associated with a weaker polar vortex. The polar vortex is what drives westerlies across the Atlantic and into Europe. So when the temperatures are warmer over North Pole in the stratosphere, it tends to be a colder signal for mid-latitudes, British Isles included. Through December, we had a crash in the temperature at 30 HPA. And we had a couple of crashes. The first one occurred at the start of December, just there. Then it tried to recover a little bit. And then we had another crash as we ran up towards Christmas. This is where we are right now. And we're still colder than average, quite substantially so. Although we have bottomed out with the temperature, so I don't think we're going to go any colder than we did around Christmas. But still significantly colder than average at 30 HPA over North Pole. 10 HPA is even higher up, and it's a similar story, really, through the course of this season. So, again, we had a fairly, not as warm in terms of those stratospheric temperature, a fairly warm temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole through November. Then we had the crash through December. We are lifting those temperatures up now. We're still cooler than average. This is where we should be at this time of year. So we're still cooler than average, but we are seeing the temperature lifting up, which we haven't yet got at 30 HPA. But I think over the next few days, we will probably find these temperatures lifting up as we saw at 10 HPA, or as we see at 10 HPA. No stratospheric warming yet. That would take us to this sort of level, and a sudden stratospheric warming would probably take us up to that sort of level. No sign of that occurring right now. However, if I show you the forecast from the GFS model at website metrosil.fr, and finally Metrosil on the links page. If I just show you the forecast of what the model is predicting to happen over the next couple of weeks. So this is the North Pole just here, where we've got all those blue and purple colours. They're the cold temperatures that we currently have over the North Pole at 10 HPA. The yellow colours around the edges are sort of warming temperatures, and we need to infiltrate those yellow colours into the North Pole, and if we can, intensify the colours towards sort of orange and red. Let's run through the next week and see what happens. So the polar vortex, the most cold temperatures at 10 HPA, remain during the coming week over North Pole. There they are. However, we are getting quite a substantial warming occurring around Greenland and also going into Europe as well. When we get warming occurring just here, it can, a week or so on, be a precursor to a major warming event beginning to take place. So this can sometimes be how major warming events begin, with these warmer temperatures around Greenland and Europe. But up to the 19th of January, looks like the cold temperatures over North Pole, 10 HPA, are still firmly rooted. We go through to the extended part of the GFS model, and we find that quite a substantial warming begins to occur around the 20th, 23rd, 22nd, 23rd of January from Siberia. So there we are on the 22nd of January with quite a major warming beginning to take place. That probably is what started off around Greenland and Europe a few days before. And this intensifies as we run into the final week of January. We get really quite an intense warming. Indeed, we're almost borderlining on a sudden stratospheric warming there, beginning to occur across Siberia and starting to push in towards the North Pole. So we finish up on the 27th of January with quite a warm-looking profile across the North Pole. We're pushing those cold temperatures at 10 HPA down in towards Europe at that point, over the North Pole. Looks like we're actually getting quite a significant warming beginning to occur. Now, we need to see where this is going. It doesn't reach the threshold of a sudden stratospheric warming yet. It is a major warming. It doesn't reach the threshold of a sudden stratospheric warming yet, but it wouldn't take all that much to intensify this into a sudden stratospheric warming. So, certainly the biggest warming that we've had so far this winter. Now, the reason we look at this is when we get a sudden stratospheric warming over the North Pole, a couple of weeks later, if it propagates down into a troposphere, and that's the layer of the atmosphere where weather is taking place, if the warm temperatures go down into a troposphere, they can set up blocking. So when you get a big warming over the North Pole in the stratosphere in the winter, it can, a couple of weeks down the line, be associated with an increased chance of blocking, and blocking is the route to proper, sustained and locked in cold weather. So it might be, as we get through into February, we've got to start thinking about northern blocking. Now, where that northern blocking sits is always a critical factor, because just because you've got blocking, it doesn't guarantee that any one place is going to get cold. It could be that you're on the mild side of a block, because as we always say, if one place is on the cold side of blocking, somewhere else has to be on the mild side of it, just the way the atmosphere balances itself out. So it's not a guarantee to anything, but when we get our major locked in severe cold weather, it tends to be preceded by sudden stratospheric warming. So we'll keep an eye on this over the next couple of weeks. Now we'll have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles from the GFS model for the next 2 weeks. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average in terms of the upper temperatures, which is at 850 HPA. That's the level I've just talked about in the troposphere where weather is taking place. We're downhill all the way with the temperatures now through to the weekend. So it was mild in the south this morning. They're dropping like a stone. They'll continue to do so. And the rest of the working week and into weekend is going to be cold. We go through to Sunday and the early part of next week, and we do see temperatures beginning to warm up a little bit. Then it turns a little bit milder, albeit I would have thought, because we're going to be thawing out frozen ground, probably in places snow, there'll tend to be a lot of mist and fog around Sunday and Monday, I suspect, but it does turn milder then. Now we go through into the rest of next week, and we've got a lot of uncertainty then. That's this period just here, but the trend of the model is increasingly moving in a colder direction through the course of next week, and these colder temperatures are being brought in from the east. So I think we will probably, in all likelihood, drag in some quite cold air from the east. The critical factor is going to be whether the high pressure is centred over Scandinavia, in which case we could also accompany snow with those cold temperatures on easterly winds, or whether the high pressure is centred over sort of Germany, Denmark, in which case we'll just be looking at very cold, frosty, but mostly dry weather. And that's what we can't yet answer, the exact positioning of that high pressure. But the trend of the GFS ensembles, I think, is certainly moving in a cold direction through the course of next week. For precipitation, well, this is the spike that's associated with tomorrow's rain/snow for England and Wales. I'll be talking about that in Snow Watch. Some places are going to have a very wet day tomorrow. Other places could probably have quite a bit of snow, but find out more about that 7 o'clock tonight. After that, it looks like we've got some rain coming up over the weekend. That's as things are turning milder. I should probably say less cold. And then we go through into next week, fair amount of dry weather coming through there. And then right at the end of the ensemble, last week of January, it's turning wetter, but that's a very long way away, and I don't think we should worry about that at all. So this is the GFS for Sunday, and this is when we're starting to drag in those milder or less cold temperatures from off the Atlantic. Now, there is a weather system coming in with this. It's just there at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, so it's just down into the south and the east of the country. I suspect that will just bring rain rather than anything wintry. Behind it, milder air is moving in from off the Atlantic, but remember, it's going to be quite cold ground that this mild air is running over, so there could well be mist and fog as we thaw out the ground, and I think just a very damp and dismal day probably on Sunday with sort of classic fall type weather, loads of gloom, mist and murk. That could continue into Monday and Tuesday as well, because high pressure is reaching through the country. You notice it is pushing increasingly to the east. The main high pressure becoming centred to the east of us just here, and the flow is already starting to go round to the east by Tuesday, but nothing particularly cold coming in at that point. I think we're just looking at lots of grey, gloomy weather, again probably mist and fog coming through. The middle and last stages of next week bring in more of an easterly flow. Notice the high pressure, it's not centred up over central Scandinavia, so it isn't up here. The high pressure is actually centering sort of around Denmark and over towards northern Germany and the Baltic Sea, so this sort of area here, which means it's a slacker easterly flow. Yes, it will be dragging in a lot of cold air, may be quite severely cold, actually. I'll talk through the temperatures in a moment, but that sort of situation would not produce much in the way of snow, because to get snow you need a fairly tight gradient between high pressure over central Scandinavia, low pressure around Italy, which we have got, but it's fairly flabby low, so you want quite a tight wind gradient, strong winds from the east to penetrate snow showers or even little troughs that can enhance the snow, penetrate that in from off the North Sea. So that sort of chart doesn't scream snow, but obviously it's a long way off, and the position of that high pressure, but currently being centred across Central Europe, that could change and be pushed further north. We go up towards day 10, it looks like we still stay cold, but wind is still coming in and the air is still coming in from up the frozen continent, so that looks like the cold is definitely coming back through into the second half of next week. Let's go through the temperatures. This is how we're starting today. It was mild in the south, colder in the north. Those cold temperatures will be down across the country tonight. Tomorrow looks a cold day, very cold in the north, not as cold in the south. That's why it'll be rain in the south and mix of rain and snow elsewhere. Then we go through to the early hours of Friday. We've got a widespread frost, could be very icy on Friday morning. Friday looks a cold day with temperatures just 1, 2, 3 degrees through most parts of the country. Widespread frost on Friday night and another really cold day, especially in the north and the east on Saturday. More frost across England and Wales on Saturday night, but it started to turn a bit milder across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And Sunday looks milder across the whole country, though it's still pretty chilly, really, in the east. And remember, there could well be fog in with that as well, which will limit the temperature potential. Looks fairly mild on Monday, with temperatures up to around 8 or 9 degrees, so lifting the temperatures up then, and more or less staying frost-free on Monday night. Tuesday, not as mild as Monday, but temperatures around average, really, on Tuesday. Notice how cold it is, though, just to our east across Germany into eastern parts of France. That is heading our way. So as we go through to the early hours of Wednesday, we've got a widespread and quite hard frost developing across England and Wales as the air begins to move in from off the frozen continental landmass, and this continues as we go through into the middle part of next week. Maximum temperatures on Wednesday look very cold, barely above freezing. Hard, possibly locally severe frost on Wednesday night, and Thursday actually got the suggestion of some ice days there across some parts of southeast England. Temperatures not getting above freezing all day next Thursday, and another hard or potentially severe frost on Thursday night into Friday, leading to another very cold day on Friday. Temperatures again barely above freezing. More severe frost on Friday night into Saturday, the 21st of January. Remember, this is dry cold. It's not bringing much snow in because of the exact position of the high pressure, but that could change. If high pressure is further north, we'll have a stronger easterly wind. Probably won't be as cold, but we could bring in snow showers. ECWF looking like this finally. So Sunday we're dragging that milder air in from off the Atlantic. Then we start to move the high pressure up towards Scandinavia through the early part of next week. Get through to the middle, that stage of next week. Again, same idea as the GFS. We've got the two models coming into agreement at the moment on the position of this high pressure, which is somewhere around Denmark and the Baltic Sea. The flow is coming in from the east, so we are bringing that bitterly cold air in off the continent, but because the high pressure isn't far enough north, we probably aren't bringing in very much in the way of snow. But very cold temperatures will be moving in from off the continent, and that takes us up to day 10, when we have got a bit more of an easterly wind then, down in the south. So that could well bring in some snow showers to southern coastal areas, particularly through the Channel. If this high pressure is anywhere further north, let's say it goes a few hundred miles north and centres just there, then I think we would really be opening the door, as well as very cold temperatures, which we have got with this, we would be opening the door to snow, particularly for England and Wales in the form of snow showers. So let's wait and see on next week's weather. There's a lot still to be determined with that, but it looks like after a milder interlude around Sunday and Monday, we probably will drag in some really quite cold air from the east, and at the very least that could produce some severe frost. Daytime temperatures probably not getting much above freezing. Whether there's any snow associated with that, it's a bit early to say, so need to firm up on that. And talking of snow, we'll be doing Snow Watch this evening, looking at the snow potential over the next few days, so come back for that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.